Tropical storm Dolly has formed. We'll take a look at the likely impacts to our area. Hi friends, Rusty back here at Meteo Mundo. We're your home for Caribbean weather, and it's great to see you on this Thursday. We now have Tropical Storm Dolly. It has formed from Invest 96L. I'm going to break down exactly what we are seeing right now, the likely track. We'll look at the tropical models and the impacts to some of our area. Let's get started. We do have, again, a new named tropical system, TS Dolly. Winds right now are 48 miles an hour. Movement is brisk at 24 miles an hour. Dolly basically has been hovering, teetering, if you will, on tropical depression or tropical storm status about the last 48 hours. This is the high resolution visible satellite imagery. Nice little tight center right now. Now look, Dolly is not an extremely impressive storm, and it's going to start to fight drier air and stronger wind shear as we get closer to the weekend. So there is a high likelihood that despite the fact we actually have a tropical storm right now, which does have its sights into the Leeward Islands, that this will likely fall apart between now and when it gets to the Leeward Islands. But we do have the fourth named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season, so you can cross Dolly off the list. Edward is going to be the next name. Now you're also getting all of that information at the bottom of your screen with the latest updates with what's happening with Dolly right now. There are no watches and warnings that are currently in effect, and we're not expecting there to be tropical storm watches and warnings because, again, the high likelihood is that beginning late Friday and into Saturday, as Dolly begins to encounter drier air just north and east of the Leeward Islands and stronger wind shear, especially as it approaches the eastern side of the Caribbean, that this system will likely begin to fall apart. Now, this is still going to have some impacts to the area. We are still going to get some really fresh winds. We're still going to get some good squalls, especially in the Leeward Islands to the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. And the opportunity, if you guys remember a couple of weeks ago, Invest 94L, to kind of see a similar situation as far as impacts go there. So that's what's going on with Dolly right now. Let's take a look at the tracks and what the models are going to be showing out of Dolly. First thing I'm going to show you guys are those spaghetti plots. So take a look at those. And again, they are very tightly clustered following that path into the Leeward Islands. Now, again, the big question is, does it hold together as it moves across the islands? Most models say no, and the Hurricane Center's official forecast does have this falling apart before it gets towards Antigua and Barbuda and Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, Saba, St. Eustatius, Anguilla, towards Anegada, Rotown, Tortola, St. Croix, St. Thomas, St. John, Yost Van Dyke, areas like that, into Vieques, Culebra, and Puerto Rico. However, again, we know what it looks like is that whatever this is going to end up being as it moves to the islands is likely to move right through this area. The models are in good agreement now with that track. So let's take a look at the models that we're looking at here. I'm going to start off with the European AI version. Take off the 5-day forecast. You can see it's a very weak signal on the European AI, which ultimately falls apart as it gets to the Northeast Caribbean. However, and we'll talk more about this coming up, there is still a scenario where down the road, conditions become more favorable in the Western Atlantic Basin, and if the low-level center or even the mid-level signal can hold on, right, and not get fully ripped apart by that wind shear, we could see some redevelopment in the Western Atlantic Basin mid to late next week if that circulation can hold together. The European model has it as far west of the Bahamas and as far east as just east of Bermuda. The H-Wharf, again, very sloppy system, holds on to a low-level center through about, again, Friday evening, early on Saturday, but after that, it does begin to fall apart, and you just have a very broad low coming right through places like Antigua, Barbuda, and Anguilla. This would be Sunday evening. So again, looks like the track is fairly locked in, but exactly what it's going to bring and how strong could it be, that's a big question. This is the Google DeepMind in animation. Where that blue line disappears is where it has the system falling apart. And you can see there's less and less signal for an opportunity for this storm to develop or continue to stay as a tropical system as it gets farther off towards the west. So the end of this darker blue line is the end of where the Google DeepMind model has this as a tropical storm. It then becomes a remnant low, moving through the Leeward Islands, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico. Look, down the road, even places like Hispaniola, especially the Dominican Republic side, might have to worry about some heavier rain. We'll see if the Southeast Bahamas and Turks and Caicos are also in that scenario as well. This is the simulated radar of the Northeast Caribbean, and you'll start to see the weather begin to go downhill early on Saturday. Right now, the main focus, if you will, of the timeline would be later Saturday, Saturday night, and throughout most of the day on Sunday. I'm going to loop this up for you guys one more time so you get an idea. Again, watch the weather go downhill. Broad area of rain. Gusty winds. Remember, Invest 94L had winds of up to 60 miles an hour in some of the higher elevation areas of our island. So if you do live in higher elevated areas, there is still certainly an opportunity that winds could be 40, 50 plus miles an hour. Sustained winds are likely to be 30 to 35, but there will be some higher gusts. Well, obviously some long period swells coming in and the opportunity for some flooding rains. Now, look, a lot of this rain will be beneficial, but we still might get too much in too short of amount of time. When we look at the rainfall totals, notice that there are a couple of bullseyes here, back down towards the Dominica, Guadalupe areas, up towards Montserrat, Antigua, and Barbuda, where again, you are looking at 3, maybe 4 plus inches of rain, 75 to 100 millimeters. Down the road, the Virgin Islands, portions of Puerto Rico, which are desperate for some heavier, good tropical downpours, could also be in store for 3 to 4 plus inches of rain. And again, on a daily basis, if it falls fast enough, there could be some extra problems to go along with that. So let me break down what I expect out of Tropical Storm Dolly. It is not expected to strengthen, and it is likely to dissipate before it gets into the Leeward Islands. But again, that doesn't mean that there's not zero impacts, because just like 94L that came through as a broad, sloppy tropical disturbance, we will still see some heavy squalls and wind gusts, especially in higher locations of over 50 miles an hour. So residents in the Northeast Caribbean, especially the Leeward Islands to begin with, let me take this map and just slide it over a little bit more here. So especially in the Leeward Islands, all the way back down towards Dominica, and eventually towards the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, should continue to closely monitor the track of Dolly and how this ultimately plays out. Again, most models have this dissipating before it gets into our area, but it's not a guarantee. Now, this could redevelop near the Bahamas next week, and that is something we have to keep a very close eye on down the road, because again, if I show you these spaghetti plots, some of the models, not all of them, still try and hold it together just north of Dominican Republic and Haiti, and potentially towards Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas. But that is going to be something to, deal with as we get towards later next week. So again, one more look at what's happening right now with Dolly. It's a compact tropical storm. Winds are 40 miles an hour. It is likely to not strengthen even farther. Now, we could get maybe 45 mile an hour winds, but very shortly it's expected to encounter relatively strong shear and drier air to the north. So this could end up being a fairly short-lived tropical storm. And again, most models and the Hurricane Center does have this dissipating before it gets into the Leeward Islands, but the track of this is likely to be through the Leeward Islands as we go over the weekend and into the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico as we move into next week. Okay, so that is what's happening with the potential impacts with Tropical Storm Dolly. As we get into the rest of the forecast, I'm going to throw the 5-day forecast back on for you guys. If you're getting anything out of this forecast video, if you guys want the latest information on Dolly, first of all, thank you for liking and subscribing. You got a comment, got a question about the forecast, feel free to drop it in the comment section below. Again, a lot of information on Dolly and other impacted areas across the Caribbean and the Bahamas scrolling right now at the bottom of your screen. There has been some active weather across the area for today, so that's the next thing I want to look at here, and then we'll get into the rest of our forecast as well. So this is our broad satellite composite here to go along with the light of lightning data for you. I'm also going to bring on our winds. First thing you might see real quickly is going to be temperatures, but I'll quickly jump over to the wind gusts, and then those will pop up. We'll begin again in the northern side of our area. Thunderstorms are developing at the hour in the northern and northwest Bahamas, Andros, New Providence, Eleuthera, back towards the Abacos, Freeport, Lucaya of Grand Bahama, and Walker's Key, all with the opportunity for some pretty hefty thunderstorms. Good lightning count here across the area. Might be a little bit more concentrated in the peninsula of Florida today. You can see those wind gusts are really firing up with some of the stronger storms already. But this is an area likely to see additional thunderstorm activity through the remainder of our Thursday. I'm not expecting as much rain for today for the central southeast Bahamas and Turks and Caicos, but you notice it's not a completely dry forecast. Not as concentrated, but there'll still be some rain across Cat Island and in Exuma, in Long Island, in Rum Key, San Salvador, the Acklands, Mayaguana, Inagua, the Caicos, and Grand Turk. You guys all have at least the opportunity for a rumble of thunder here or there. Still a few thunderstorms developing across the hour for the Dominican Republic. Haiti will get a few storms as well, more concentrated on the DR side. Santo Domingo, San Pedro de Macorís areas that could see some healthy thunderstorms across their area for today. I'll switch over to our our marine forecast for you guys now. Look, we need some rain in Puerto Rico. We still have our heat advisory. At least we don't have the extreme heat warning for Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Winds again in miles an hour, gusting to around 30 miles an hour. Seeing a few thunderstorms from the Ulti Alto area to Mayagüez and Aguadilla on the central and west central sides of the island. Pretty quiet forecast at the hour across the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. That's our high resolution visible satellite imagery. Still showing you some brisk easterlies there. Look, tropical system, we are going to freshen up the winds from time to time. We're not going to get a lot of rain in the Leeward Islands until the system moves through. And again, that opportunity is likely to arrive later on Saturday. But St. Bart's today with a nice little 30-mile-an-hour wind gust. As we move down the road, Dominica's had a 22-mile-an-hour wind, and we're starting to see a little bit more tropical moisture moving back into the Windward Islands. You can see the thicker cloud coverage over Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, portions of Grenada and TNT. It's not necessarily certainly guaranteeing that there's going to be some showers and thunderstorms in this area, but there'll be the opportunity here as well. And if I zoom out a little bit more, even out ahead of this, there should be a little bit more tropical moisture developing down here. So kind of the Windward Islands gets a brush of some showers on Friday, but obviously the main system is going to be with Dolly and track farther north. Unlike some of 94L, where some of the more impacts were farther south, we're flipping it here, and it's the northern side of the Lesser Antilles with a better opportunity for some impacts out of the remnant of Dolly. And again, that's what we hope will be the case that'll be moving through. Iran, you saw today, about a 35-mile-an-hour wind. Not a lot of rain in the forecast across the ABC Islands, but still some fresher conditions. Heavy thunderstorms across Panama, Costa Rica. Starting to get some scattered rain developing over Belize. Right along the coastline, beginning to work its way inland. Roatan, Utila, Guanaja with the opportunity for a couple of rumbles of thunder. You can see some of the lightning over Roatan and Utila earlier today. And again, that activity will likely march inland and then develop just to the north all the way up through Quintana Roo and then work its way west. If you are in Cancun and Cozumel, a few thunderstorms early this afternoon that will begin to dry out. My friends of the Cayman Islands and Jamaica, a relatively quiet day across the area. Can't rule out an isolated thunderstorm, but in general, we're looking at a fairly dry forecast for our Thursday. Let's, though, get into the rain outlook right now, where I expect the showers and thunderstorms to develop. So we're going to break that down. Going to go out to our wide view one more time, and then we'll take a look at the model and then the European as it develops the next 5-day rain. So obviously, this big story in town is what's going to happen with Dolly. We'll start it at the beginning. You can see that it's fairly concentrated through about Friday, Saturday, begins to fall apart. Now, again, that doesn't mean that this isn't a huge slug of tropical moisture coming through, because it absolutely is. Sometimes when these systems blow their tops and they're weak, we can really see the rain field expand, and actually we get more rain over a broader area. We just don't get the concentration of sustained winds of over 40. But you can clearly see there's a big swath of rain coming in. I'm going to favor places from Martinique north, as I mentioned already earlier. Guadeloupe, Montserrat, Antigua, Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, Saba, St. Eustatius, St. Bart, St. Martin, and Anguilla. Those are the bullseyes to begin with to start to see the weather conditions go downhill beginning on Saturday and then throughout the day on Sunday. Now down the road, this is likely to track right over the U.S. and British Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico with some great beneficial rain in those areas, and then eventually pull its way far enough west where at least some of the Dominican Republic and Haiti will see some opportunities for rain and storms there. And down the road again, does it hold together with a lower mid-level center to try and redevelop in the Western Atlantic Basin? If nothing else, I think it's going to likely bring some better rain chances to places like Turks and Caicos in the central and the southeast Bahamas. Let's take a look at the rainfall over the next 5 days. It looks like this. Still a couple of areas outside of whatever Dolly is going to bring to our eastern zones. You can clearly see again, it's a wet forecast across the east coast of the United States into the northern sides of the Bahamas and the peninsula of Florida. There's what Dolly is going to bring. Again, the farther south in general you live in the Lesser Antilles, the lower the rain totals, but everyone's going to get a little bit of something out of this. But again, more concentrated, the 3+ inches inches of rain from places like Guadalupe up to the north. Central American gyre is still quite active across Panama and Costa Rica. Still some decent thunderstorm activity over portions of the northwest side of the Caribbean. Cayman Islands, Jamaica, Cuba, those areas will likely see lower rain totals here over the next several days. Now, we could still get into some gale conditions in the Caribbean, and we'll still have to watch out for some long period swells moving in. I'm going to be monitoring that situation, but don't be shocked if we get some small craft advisories and or warnings for the Leeward Islands, the Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico, especially in the open waters of the Atlantic and the windward sides of the islands. So my boaters, my fishermen, be aware of that. I'm going to run this one more time. Watch these significant waves really begin to build throughout the day on Saturday into Sunday, where we could have some 10 to 12 foot or 3 to 4 meter swells coming in, and some of those fresher swells will certainly put shore waters of Bahamas and into Turks and Caicos as well. Okay, friends, I'm out of time. You got a question about the forecast, feel free to drop it in the comments section below. I'll continue to keep you updated. Thanks for tuning in. I'll give you the latest on Tropical Storm Dolly tomorrow. Until then, I'll see you soon.